Welcome to the Nitty Gritty. I don't know what episode we're on. They all run together. 8? Well, I think I might be most excited for today's guest. You probably don't like it when I call you like one of my heroes. It might be awkward. I mean, people say it to me all the time, and it's just never comfortable. I'm just kidding. That never really happens to me. But did you say my meat's the best? So that's cool. But Kim White is here. I wish we had like a sound effect.
Ooh.
Standing ovation.
Some kind of like the crowd.
Right. But no, she is one of my favorite people, especially to follow on social media. If any of you follow her, it's Kim Can Kick It. Right?
Right.
On pretty much all your social media.
Mm-hmm.
See, we're getting that out of the way right in the beginning now.
We normally forget that.
Usually it's at the end. It's like, oh yeah, what's your social media? So we met, it's been about a year, right?
Just over a year, yeah.
So
Did you meet the first time here at the restaurant?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So we met here at Bam Bam's, it's been about a year ago.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say a mutual friend because he is really your friend. We're acquaintances. You know, I'd like to think that we'll just say we're buddies.
That's good.
I don't have his phone number. You do.
Yes.
Right? So Chris Harrison and I met, of The Bachelor, of course. I mean, we don't really need to give him an introduction.
He shouldn't need one.
I met him in Austin when I was cooking there about 6 or 7 years ago. And then we just kind of stayed in touch randomly through social media. So about a year ago when they were filming Becca's season, he wanted to come in for lunch. And I was so excited about it. And he showed up with you.
Yeah.
And that's the first time that we met. And Chris just went on and on about how amazing she is and how amazing her story is. And
my wife has been obsessed with you ever since.
Yeah.
She was in here that day because Cam gave us like the inside scoop that Chris was coming in. So we had like our own little fan table.
Yeah, he was so cool. The fact that he was just like, yeah, you can bring your wife, bring your friends.
I know. He was
whatever.
like, everyone sit down. He was
so
awesome.
Cool.
He's such a good guy.
So how did you two meet?
I met him at an Imagine Dragon concert.
Oh, that's right. Because you're friends with the Imagine Dragons guys,
Yeah,
right?
so I was sitting in the like family section, and one of their managers saw Chris like waiting in line at the Troubadour in LA.
Right.
Because it was just this tiny little concert. And the manager saw him and was like, oh my gosh, Chris, like, come on. Like, you don't need to wait in line. So they brought him inside and brought him up to like the family section.
Right.
And he sat down right next to us. And my friend that was sitting next to me, she was like, I think that's the Bachelor guy. And I looked at him and I was like, no, it's not. And then I looked at him again because it was weird. He had scruff on his face. He was in jeans and like a T-shirt. So to see him out of context,
right.
It was like super weird.
Didn't register.
And so I just stared at him for a second and I was like, it is. So I put my hand on his leg and I was like, are you Chris Harrison?
It's like if I had a nickel for every time that happened.
And he was like, yeah. And he was a sweetheart. We talked the whole concert, and Dan from Imagine Dragons had kind of shared my story with him at the end of the concert.
Right.
And that was a year exactly from the day I had been diagnosed was the day that I met Chris. And so it was like kind of an emotional day anyways.
Right.
And Chris was like, the Women Tell Alls tomorrow night. You guys should come. But we were flying back here to Utah, so we couldn't. And he's like, okay, come to the finale. And I was going to be in Tahiti with my husband during the finale, which was amazing. And I was like, dang it, I'm like losing all these opportunities to go to the finale. And he was like, Mac has my information. Come whenever you want. And so I remember I was sitting in the bathtub one night and I was like super depressed from chemo and just having a really bad day. And I got on my email, sent Chris an email, and I'm like, hey, I don't know if you remember me. I met you at the Troubadour, wondering if you actually meant what you said. And he emailed me like right back and he was like, of course I did. Come, bring how many people you want. Like, so the first time we went, there were 7 of us that went, and that was Caitlin's season finale.
No
and
way.
I've gone ever since.
That's so cool.
Really?
Yeah.
So like how long had it been that you had met him that you emailed him?
It would have been probably a good like 6 months.
So quite a while.
Yeah.
And he was still just really responsive.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I don't know, something about our relationship, just like because I'm sure he hears stories like mine all the time and just like, well, maybe not, but mine wasn't that dramatic yet.
Well, I mean,
a little bit, but not, I don't know, something about it. He just like put me under his arm and he just loved me
well,
from
and
the
I
get-go,
think
and it's so sweet.
I think with you, you're a lot more than just your story. Like,
Thank you.
well, sorry, I don't mean to get all, but I mean, it's fascinating. I do remember seeing, you remember my friend Trisha
Yeah.
Jacobson, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right before that day when you guys came in, I actually saw her I think it was right before she posted
Oh.
about you coming in
Yeah.
and meeting for the first time. And that's when it kind of all clicked. But yeah, I mean, I think that your story, I mean, I don't know how much you want to talk about it. I'm sure you
I'll
get.
talk
It's
whatever.
such. I mean,
Yeah.
for those
I
of
would
you
love
out
to
there,
hear you tell as much as you're willing to share about it.
For those of you that don't know, 4 times, is that like you've beat cancer or overcome it how many different times?
No, they just so I was diagnosed with what's called adrenal cortical carcinoma 5.5 years ago. I was pregnant when we found the first tumor, which was 11 centimeters. When they admitted me to the hospital that day, I ended up getting HELLP syndrome 3 days later and had to deliver our 18-week-old baby boy.
What's HELLP syndrome?
It's like the easiest way to explain it, it's a more serious condition of preeclampsia.
Okay.
And the mom will die unless you deliver the baby.
Wow.
So most women get it towards the end of their pregnancy when the baby's far enough along to live after delivery. There's not very many cases where the mom gets it at 18 weeks and, something so low. So
were you sick when you went into the hospital at 18 weeks then?
So they found my blood pressure shot up at 14 weeks, and they had been monitoring me for the next 4 weeks, trying to figure out what was going on with my blood pressure. And that's when they finally decided to do an ultrasound on my kidneys. And that's when they found the tumor and admitted me to the hospital. And by this point, I couldn't breathe. My blood pressure was 180 over 120 at that point, which is insane. I would worry about dying in my sleep just because my heart would do all these weird palpitations and just all this craziness. And so,
did you have any history of health issues in the family?
No,
anything at all?
No, not at all. My little girl, she was 18 months at the time. And with her pregnancy, I exercised literally 3 days before I delivered her, was doing body pump classes, lifting weights. I played college soccer, so I was always super fit, healthy, and had nothing.
Wow.
So it just blindsided us. And then they did the surgery to remove the main tumor. In that surgery, they discovered that the surgery had invaded my IVC, which is the biggest vein that goes to your heart. So that complicated things. During surgery, they had to call an emergency cardio team and open up my IVC to take the tumor out inside of that. And then they realized it's definitely cancer, because before surgery, they thought they were all 99% sure it's not cancer. So a couple weeks later, we get the calls telling us that it's adrenal cortical carcinoma. And I was so naive to cancer that when they told me that the tumor had been cancerous, I just thought, well, it's gone, I'm fine. And then it was when we actually looked up the type of cancer, once we found out, that's when I realized oh crap, because it had a list of worst case scenarios, poor prognosis, and I had a check mark next to every single one.
And isn't that a really rare form?
Yeah, so
cancer?
it's 1 in a million.
Sheesh.
And it's
1 in a million?
Yeah, and only 20% of patients live 5 years. And those 20% are the ones that catch it early. And we didn't catch mine early because it had already spread into my IVC and then spread to my lungs at that point as well. So it was basically just the first oncologist I met said, "You're dying. Chemo doesn't work. There's nothing we can do," basically.
So what was that? I mean, how long of time had that taken from when you had gone in, so at 18 weeks, first found something, to that?
So that was February 20th of 2014 was the day we found the tumor. And then March 12th was the day of surgery. So it was end of March that we were told, you're dying. And I just remember after that appointment, crying in the car and calling my older sister and being how the heck am I going to tell mom and dad that their daughter's dying? that just like devastated me to be. And then thinking about the fact that I had an 18-month-old daughter and she was going to grow up without her mom. Like,
Oh man.
that was really one of the roughest moments of all of it, was after that appointment. But we ended up going to Chicago. We left Utah to go get another opinion, and most oncologists have never seen my type of cancer. So this oncologist hadn't, but she was just a spitfire and was just like ready to fight and do whatever we needed to do. She started me on oral chemo. It didn't really work. So then it was about...
What took you to Chicago?
My mom just looked up cancer treatments places, and she found the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and we were on a flight like 2 days later to go out there and check it out. So I did treatment. They did another surgery that following November to go in after the 6 tumors that were in my lungs. And then because of negligence of the dang surgeon, I almost died after that surgery.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So with my type of cancer, I had lost my first adrenal gland, because that's where the adrenal glands start. And then my other one was, when you take the oral chemo for my type of cancer, it puts your other adrenal gland to sleep. And your adrenal glands is what, when you go into fight or flight, they're what's releases cortisol to help you like get through it.
Right.
And so when your body goes through a stress of a surgery, it needs extra. Naturally, your body would release more cortisol to get you through it. So for me, anytime I have any kind of anesthesia or sedation, I have to get stress doses. And then depending on how long the procedure is and all that, depends on how much I need. And then I usually need it for a following of like 2 to 3 days, depending on the extent of the surgery. And so this was a pretty big surgery. They went in through my back. There's like a big incision. And after surgery, he stopped giving me hydrocortisone. And my body doesn't make any cortisol. And so I just slowly started, it got to the point where I couldn't talk. And Tragan kept telling them, like, she needs cortisol in her system. Like, give her some hydrocortisone. And they were just, and the doctor like came in and was like, no, she's fine. And I couldn't feed myself. Like, there's pictures of people trying to feed me. Like, I couldn't open my eyes. And Tragan like freaked out at one point, and he was like, someone get me another doctor. Like, she needs another doctor. She is going to die. And one of the nurses went and got another doctor, and that doctor walked in the room and was like, someone get her some hydrocortisone. And like, once they gave it to me, I started slowly coming back. But
So what'd the doctor say?
he never came back in. He never came
You
in and
never saw him
apologized.
again?
Nope.
Of course not.
What?
He was such, like, the oncologist was so pissed.
Do you remember his name? Let's call him out right now.
Don't do it.
I remember it starts with a K, but I don't really remember. Yeah, I was like, what a jerk. He never came in and apologized. He never, like, nothing. Because then we could claim negligence if he owns up to it.
Right.
So doctors
my
have to be, like,
gosh.
super careful about stupid stuff like that. But it's crazy.
So when you're going through this, you're finding out how rare it is. I mean, are they telling you you probably only have
Yeah.
a certain
like 2 to
amount of
3
time?
months. Yeah.
This is such a stupid question, but I don't even know. How does that feel? Like, I mean, what do you think about when you're told that?
I think shock is a beautiful thing, I've discovered, because a lot of the beginning, I feel like shock really protected us.
What do you mean by that?
I feel like there was so much going on that I feel like the shock protected me of the reality of it all. As much as I was feeling emotions and so sad and overwhelmed, you think about that and you're like, how do you even get through something like that? And I truly feel like shock gets you through something like that. Like, our bodies kind of protect us from what's really going on. And you just keep like slowly moving forward because you're still in shock, and you don't, like, when I look back at it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what happened in a matter of a couple weeks span is just insane. So I feel, but the day that that doctor said you're dying, that was the worst. And I just, my daughter's life just flashed before my eyes, and I was like, I'm going to miss this. 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 So every time now that I'm here for so many of these milestones, like her starting kindergarten and now she's going to start first grade, it's like it's so special to be like, I thought I was going to miss all these and I'm still here. So it's pretty.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty special. But after that surgery, the tumors more came back in my lungs. So then I start IV chemo, and I ended up doing that here in Utah. I found a new oncologist, and that was 2015. And that was just the year of hell. Chemotherapy was Monday through Thursday. Monday, Tuesdays was 3.5 hours. Wednesday, Thursdays was 5.5 to 6. And then I'd go in on Fridays for fluids, and then I'd get 3 weeks off, and then I'd start again.
And how long did this go
A year.
total? Oh, my God.
That was a year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why we call 2015 like the worst year ever. Because chemo, as much as it takes your hair away and makes you really sick and like got sickly skinny and all that, but it messed with me mentally so bad. And there was points where I was like suicidal, and I just like, I look back at my journal entries and I'm like, I don't want to be here. Life would be so much better if I was just gone. Like, I hated my husband for ever trying to be positive. Like, I was just like, how dare you be positive? This sucks. Like, I held resentment towards him that I would just think about like, I'm going to die, you're going to get married, and you get to enjoy our daughter. And so then I resented him and like pushed that on him. And he was just there trying to love me, and I wouldn't allow it. And we always talk about like Hensley is the only reason we're still together from that year. Like, she got us through. Tragan's like, I just came home just to see Hensley.
In those days, what made you keep going?
We were really good at planning things. So the week of surgery or the week of chemo, I would feel horrible. The week after, by week 3, I would feel okay. And then that following week, right before I'd start chemo again, I would feel the best. And I had to have something to look forward to. So whether it was just like a little girls trip or just like, we even went to Havasu Pie in the middle of all of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
My doctors were like,
You're going through chemo and you go to...
Like, could you just go to Bridal Veil Falls or something?
My doctors were like, is there service down there? I was like, I don't know, but I guess we'll find out. They were like so concerned, but I helicoptered in. Like, obviously I can hike 10 miles.
Sure.
And then I horsebacked out. But like walking on the trails, that people are always like, oh my gosh, there's a bald person down here. Like, what's happening?
Well, you had to be feeling pretty weak too, right?
Oh, so weak.
Oh my gosh.
So doing stuff like that, but also moving my body has always been huge. So anytime I could do anything to move my body, that always helps me mentally.
Sure.
Everything to get through it. But I even look back at that year and I'm like, I don't know how we survived it. It's
When you
crazy.
started, did you know it was going to be a year? Or is it
No.
one of those things where you do a couple times, see how it goes,
Yeah.
and just kind of keeps on almost dragging out?
And everything with my type of cancer is just trial and error.
Sure.
Like, and they knew that this type of chemo doesn't even really work, but it can slow it down. And that's kind of what it did. It kind of slowed down the growth, but I never had a good scan. It was just like, well, there's only like 10 more new tumors. Like,
Wow.
so there was 2 tumors that 2 scans they considered stable, where they're like, looks like some of them are grown, but there's no new ones, but some of them may have shrunk. So we're calling it stable. But of that year, everything else was always like bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news. And just
Did you have any
continued.
other surgeries that month, or were they just trying to do it through chemo?
Just through chemo that year. And then when we got to 2016, my lungs were just full. Like, we couldn't even count how many tumors were in my lungs. And my oncologist was like, I'm so sorry. He was like, you probably have 2 to 3 months. I don't know what else to do. He had tried switching the type of chemo, and we had done 3 months of a different type of chemo, and it hadn't done anything either. And so he's like, I've done all that I know what to do, and gave me another 2 to 3 months to live.
So that's the second or third
That's
time
the second.
in a year
Yeah.
and a half, that you've heard you have 2 to 3 months. And it's like, I guess you would expect after a year of chemo to start maybe hearing some good news.
Yeah. and most people, like most cancers, respond to chemo. And so
Right.
it's like they know they're going in for 6 months of chemo. And then like most types of cancers have plans. And you go in, you know the plan, you do it, and like you get answers.
Right.
But
So
yeah.
at what point was he just like, we got to try something different? Did he reach out to anybody else?
So the second type of chemo he put me on, he had called a doctor in New York that I guess had specialized in ACC. And he was like, try, I think it's called Steptis, I don't remember, some weird name. But that's when he tried me on the other chemo, but my tumors didn't respond to it. So he was just like done at this point. He's like, I have nothing left to offer you.
I mean, at any given time, how many cases like yours are there? I mean, to your point, most doctors might have maybe read this in a book,
Yeah.
but probably never dealt with
It's
it.
just what they're looking up. There are a few doctors. There's one in Michigan that's an expert. And then there's one, I forget where he's located, but there's two experts in the U.S.
Okay.
So, and I didn't know about them at the time, but now through Facebook groups and stuff, a lot of the ACC patients will travel to go see these experts.
Okay.
And so at this point, I called a friend, and he had been battling a rare form of renal carcinoma since 2011, and an immunotherapy drug had saved his life. He was like one of the first patients on immunotherapy drugs in the world. And so he immediately like sent all my information, got me to send all my information to his doctor in California. And we went and saw him, and he was like, I think these drugs can work, and you have no other, nothing else
Right.
to offer you. So might as well try it. And that's when I started on Keytruda, was right after that. And then quickly, like, my body started to get better, and I just started to have more energy. And we didn't know if it was just because chemo was leaving my body or if this drug was actually working. Like, we had no idea. But after 4 infusions of Keytruda, there was only 1 tumor left in my lungs.
Only one left.
Mm-hmm.
Down from what?
Like plus 50.
Oh my gosh. So you do that for a year plus.
Yeah.
Nothing. And then a month later with this new, and had anybody used that medicine for your type of
No.
cancer before?
No. I was the
my
first.
Were they coming in doing case studies and studying what was going on?
No, because I wasn't in any studies, so I'm sure that like it's documented now, and there's through Facebook, there's been other patients with ACC that have responded well to Keytruda, but none of them like I did. The cool thing about Keytruda is, for those that are LDS, is President Uchtdorf had given me a blessing when I was very first diagnosed. And in that blessing, he said, there will be a medicine that is not yet on the market that will be for your benefit and your good. And Keytruda wasn't on the market at that time. It was on the market about 8 months later.
How did that blessing happen?
He is really good friends with my sisters-in-law's really good friends. So she asked them if they would ask him to give me a blessing. So
Wow.
He was already my favorite, but
I
he just
know.
jumped even further.
yeah.
Unbelievable.
So that was a huge miracle. And that drug gives people like crazy side effects. I didn't have not one side effect. Like, it will give people like really bad rashes. It can really affect their lungs. Like, it can do all these gnarly things to people, and nothing. Like, I would take the drug. At one point, I took the drug, got on an airplane that night, and went on a 20-mile backpacking trip. Like,
What?
yeah.
I wouldn't even do that healthy. Jeez. That is unbelievable.
So that was it. But it doesn't stop there, of course,
Right,
not.
Right.
So then the cancer was also in my liver at the time, and Keytruda, for some reason, didn't touch my liver. And the tumors in my liver, one grew to be 18 centimeters. The other one was 10 centimeters. The other one was 9, and the other one was 6. So my whole...
Did you even have a liver?
Luckily, it was all on the right side of the liver, so the left side was clean, which is the
Could you feel
only
those?
reason.
I mean, those are big tumors.
So you couldn't feel it, you couldn't see it, which is crazy for my tiny little frame of a body, because it had just grown like all the way to the left side of my body and then down to my pelvis. So it was just taking up and just pushing organs out of the way. I was in a lot of pain and like miserable because none of my organs are where they're supposed to be.
So we have this, talk about swings of emotion. I mean, we have this
Yeah.
drug that works, the lungs go down to 1, and now all of a sudden
The liver
it's
freaks
just
out.
the next.
which has been my 5.5 years. It's constantly like we get a breath of fresh air, which Keytruda was the greatest thing ever. And God for sure knew I needed that break. Because we had 3 months. It was the summer of 2016. We had 3 months where I was healthy and strong, and we got to just like actually live our lives again. And so that was, I even said to a friend afterwards, like, if I were to die now, I would be okay. Like, I just felt so cheated before that. Like, I didn't get to, you really don't realize how special life is until it's about to be taken from you. And I think that's a beauty of being diagnosed with cancer, is that you get that awakening. And so I just felt so cheated because I was like, there's all these things I want to do and haven't done and experience, and now I don't get to, and life's about to be taken from me. And so that summer, it was like we were never home. We just were always playing as a family and just making memories. And
what is your daughter doing like throughout this process? Like, she was so young, but could she understand what was happening?
I think to some extent. I mean, she was 18 months, so it just became normal. When she would come to the hospital, though, she wouldn't come near me. Like the first time she ever came in the room, and I couldn't see her when I was in the ICU. And so I would go days without seeing her and trying to FaceTime her. And then I think naturally as a kid, you kind of like resent your mom for not being there.
Right.
And so she'd come to the hospital, and we realized very quickly that if she could see any IV or anything on me, she wouldn't come near me. So we got to the point where I would make the nurses unhook me from everything and just like leave my IVs in and then cover everything with a sweatshirt so that she would actually come near me. And even still, she'd be like super hesitant. But it's actually been in the recent years when she turned like 5 and 6 that we started seeing the like trauma and emotional parts kind of come out through behavior and stuff. And that's been really hard, but we've put her through counseling and therapy and tried to help her just release that trauma that's been built up over the years, because she doesn't know any different. Her mom's always been sick her whole life. But then when you get bouts of me being healthy and then I go back into the hospital, I think that's been really hard now that she understands it more.
It's almost a parallel to what you're going through, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of like you get a little ray of sunshine and then gets taken away, and that'd be really hard for a kid. And it'd be really hard as a parent, I think, because kids don't have filters. And so it's like, hey, I'm sick, be nice. Yeah. It's like, well, I don't care, I want you home. And so I that would be tough. That'd be really tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's a firecracker, that one. She's hilarious.
She's just like me.
Yeah.
Which is why we butt heads so much.
Some of my favorite Instagram stories of yours are when you've kind of hit your wall with her. And I think everybody would agree that follows you that your honesty is your best trait. I love it. Doesn't matter what time of day, what you're wearing, like what emotional state, you share it. And I think that it is such a healthy thing. And so,
well, as humans, we crave connection, and the only way to connect is by being true and vulnerable. Right. And that's why I believe people connect to me so much, is because I'm not afraid to be like, this is real life. And people anytime I talk about like Hensley, it's like my DMs explode. It's like, thank you. Oh my gosh.
I hate my kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh my gosh. Because if you're a mom, you get it.
For
you
sure.
know how hard it is to be a mom. And so people love to be able to see someone say that, yes, being a mom freaking sucks a lot of the time.
Were you as open in the beginning of your journey as you are now, as far as like sharing it?
I remember when I was in the hospital the very first, and I had like opened up Instagram, and back then I had like, I don't know, like 300 followers. And I opened it up, and I was private, so there was all of these requests. And I just remember going through and being like, who are you? No, decline. And seeing people from like high school coming out of the works like, you only want to follow me because I have cancer? Decline. Like, I was just like so annoyed that people wanted to like get into my business. But then it was slowly, as like people started telling me how much my story helped them, I was like, oh, this is more than them just wanting to get into my business. they see someone going through this and they want to know how. And it doesn't just help people with cancer. Like, people tell me that all the time. Like, I don't have cancer, but my life is really hard right now, and I'm really grateful that you're so open about how you get through the hard.
So when did you kind of recognize that it is something like you sharing? This is kind of giving you a platform to help others. Like,
Yeah.
can you see that while you're going through it? Like, are you able to kind of see this might be helpful to other people someday?
I wonder if there was a turning point to
Yeah.
that point, like where you realized, because you're declining, right? You're declining
Yeah.
everybody. Like, stay out of my business. Don't just like because of my cancer,
Yeah.
right? To going like, hey, because I'm a firm believer that our trials aren't for us.
Me too.
They're for others.
Mm-hmm.
It's for us to be able to help other people and relate to more people and lift more people up. And was there something that was kind of a wake-up call or a light bulb going off that said, okay, I've got to open up and, I can help a lot of people?
I'm trying to think when I made my Instagram no longer private, but I don't remember, but I'm assuming that at that point I was willing to let more people in because I was seeing how it was helping those that like did know me or had heard my story from a friend or something.
What stage were you at when you did that? Like, where were we at in the journey?
I think it was probably through chemo.
Okay.
Because I really started documenting every chemo and how I was feeling. And I think with anything too, if you get a good response, you're more willing to keep going.
Sure.
And the love and support that I continually felt made me more willing to continue to share. And so that continued on. And then it just like grew. It was just so natural. It just kind of grew on its own. I was never trying to grow an Instagram base, and it just happened.
Wow. Well, that's a part of social media I don't think I've ever really thought of before. I mean, using it as a support system for things like that.
Yeah.
I think that social media kind of has a negative connection to it now because, it's easy to see negative things. But I also think that there's a whole other side that can be really good. And I've never really thought of the whole support side of it, especially in your situation, just to have so many people rooting for you.
And I mean, I get people all over the world that will send me and be like, praying for you from Finland and praying from you from, Honduras. Like,
how cool is that?
Yeah, it's so cool. And I've been able to connect with people and that are fighting cancer in other countries. And, it's a really cool thing to be able to connect that way.
Well, do you ever look at, obviously that first year and a half I can only imagine based on what you've shared, pure hell.
Yeah.
Do you ever look at that as kind of almost preparing you to, that Keytruda thing keeps coming back to my head. Like, you're the first, at least with your form of cancer, to get that.
Yeah, because it's made for lung cancer and melanoma. Yeah.
Right. And do you ever look at that and realize that you were getting prepared for something?
Oh.
Kind of like you've got to fight this fight, and if you keep your head down, you keep in it or do your best.
Well, and it's like you just said, like our trials and experiences allow us to help others. And I started a nonprofit in the midst of all of this madness to help specifically young moms battling cancer. And for me to be able to sit down in front of them and see them going through chemo and like look into their eyes and know exactly what that feels like, I needed to experience that pain and that hell so that I can sit down and tell them it will get better. Like, you're going to get past this mental insanity that's going on in your head right now, and look at them and be like, I know you feel crazy. Like, chemo's making you crazy. You're not crazy. Because I had a friend that was like, she called me bawling and she was like, I'm insane. Like, I'm doing all these things I would never do. Like, what is going, like, I'm getting so mad all the time. She's like, I'm not me and it's freaking me out. And I'm like, it's the drugs talking. Like, I promise you, ask my husband.
You say ask your husband. That question has popped in my head. Does he ever, because I could totally see him being a great benefit to spouses.
Yes.
Of somebody, of people going
our
through
plan
that.
is to write a book.
Right.
We're just.
I hope you guys do.
But to be able to, when someone's diagnosed, be like, okay, this is for the patient, this is for the spouse,
Right.
this is what is going to help you guys get through this. And Tragan will always tell every husband or wife, whoever is the caretaker, do not try and fix it.
Right.
100%. Like, he was always just trying to like fix it and look for the positive and look for the good. And I didn't feel like I was allowed to be pissed. And I needed a good, like, almost 2 years of being pissed.
Right.
Like, it took me a long time to come around.
Sure.
And I mean, I had my obviously moments of hope and trying to find joy, but it was really hard for me. And Tragan naturally was already a positive person. And so it was easier for him. And I wasn't at that point. And so he always tells spouses, like, let them feel and just tell them you're sorry and you love them.
So you're saying that you weren't a very positive person even before?
I don't think I was.
Right.
Like, at least when I compare me now to me then, the biggest thing that's made a difference for me is writing in a gratitude journal. And when you learn to find gratitude every day in your life, it makes you a naturally more positive person. And I'm like, if I would have done that, whenever I speak to youth groups, I'm like, start it now.
Right.
Start a gratitude journal now so that you just naturally learn to find gratitude in, because then when it is dark, you can still find gratitude.
Sure.
But
So do you have every day I'm going to find 3 things, or is
I
it
write
just
3 things every morning.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you just wake up, that's the first thing.
I do 3 things of gratitude, two reasons I love Tragan, 2 reasons I love Hensley. And then I write my I am statements. And I always write I am NED, which means no evidence of disease. I write my liver is healed and my lungs are healed. I write it every day. And then I write, and I'm grateful for all the treatments that got me to this point. And I'm like, until those statements come true, I'm going to continue to write them as if they've already happened.
How often do you go back and look at old posts? I don't know. What do you call it?
Oh, Instagram
Entries.
No, entries.
Oh.
There we go.
I just found some old journals the other day, and I opened it up and I read one on Instagram because people see me now, and especially if they're a new follower, they're like, how is she so happy about all this? Like, she's in and out of the hospital all the time, blah, blah, blah. And I read one of my old journal entries, and people were like, oh my gosh, I needed to hear that. Like, I needed to know that you struggled that bad, to know that, like, right now when I'm in my dark, that I can get to the place that you're at one day. Like, it's comforting to see someone and know that they were that dark and it was that hard, and then they got over it and got through it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So from a husband perspective, I can't even imagine watching my wife go through that. I mean, to the point of wanting to fix it. I get that.
Yeah.
I would 100%. I would be going absolutely crazy with this helpless feeling of not being able to do anything, because most things in life I feel like we can help, right?
No, not with the wife. It's not about the nail, Andrew. It's not about the nail.
But what did he do? I mean, he's not here. I'd love to ask him, but I mean, during this 1.5 years, is he still having to go to work every day? I mean, like, what is he doing as he's just watching you just go through this, knowing that there's nothing he can do?
Yeah, he took, thankfully, the office that he worked at the time, they were really sweet. They actually let him have Fridays off, and then they worked for him so that they gave him all of the money he would have made those
That's so
days.
cool.
Which was pretty amazing. They did that for a few months, but he took a ton of work off in the beginning just because we thought I had 2 to 3 months,
Yeah.
you know? And then he started going back to work regularly. But for him, he's the type of guy that when he's struggling, he gets really quiet and he just kind of puts his head down and distracts himself. And he did a lot of that. He'd spend a lot of time in the garage, just fiddling around with like wood projects and building things and tinkering, and or he'd watch a lot of movies. Like, he just kind of fell into like this deep depression like all of us were. But his way of dealing with it is just kind of escaping the world. So,
Which could be good. It's like you don't need, if he's not going to be positive.
no,
maybe
he
it
was
is better.
positive. I wasn't
Well,
positive.
no, I'm just saying, like, when he's struggling, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, when he is in one of those dark moments, it might be good to just, like, go watch movies, stay out in the garage. Like, things are hard enough for me as it is.
And I
'Cause that's
wasn't
the other
nice
thing.
to him. I was so mean.
Well,
like, I
and-
wouldn't have wanted to be around me either. Like, I was a terrible wife.
Well, and I don't think anybody
So-
would blame you for being like that, obviously. But it would be hard because it's like, it's not like you can go up and say, honey, I'm just kind of depressed today. Oh, really?
I had a hard day. Oh, did ya?
Really? Well, we
Which
can
is
talk
what I
about
would have
it.
said.
Yeah.
I would have been like, really?
We can
Your
talk
day's
about
hard?
it when I get home from chemo. Okay, sweetheart? I mean, give me a break. So that would be a really, really hard dynamic.
It's a very strange dynamic, and one that you're obviously not prepared for
Sure.
in any way.
No. So we beat it now. What happens next? So now we find
Oh, the liver.
massive tumors on the liver. Now what?
So they start me on Y90 radiation, which is where they put these little beads, glass beads full of radiation directly into your liver. They do the procedure, and it doesn't like really, the glass beadlets don't stay in the liver, which causes problems because they're really damaging to the lungs. So they're like, we can't do that again. So then they're like, we're going to take chemo and put it directly into your liver. So they take the red devil, which I'd had before. It's called cisplatin. It's
The red devil.
It's literally red. I have pictures of the first time they infuse it into my IV, and it literally looks like they're infusing blood into your, like, it's awful. And they call it the red devil because it makes you feel so sick. So they put that in through my groin directly to the liver, and they do that twice. And one of the times was like 3 days before Christmas, and only 5% of people lose their hair from it. Of course, lost my hair for the second time. I was like, really? Come on. So that Christmas was like, I slept from like the 24th to the 26th. I like got up Christmas morning just to see Hensley open her puppy. She was getting a dang puppy for Christmas. And then I like had to go back to bed. Like, I was so sick and just slept for 3 days and miserable. And then a couple weeks later, I'm like in excruciating pain. And they said that there was, I think it was an 8% chance you will need your gallbladder taken out because of a chemoembolism. Sure enough, should have just scheduled the gallbladder removal surgery before. Tragan takes me to the ER one night because I'm just dying, and they're like, "Oh yeah, your gallbladder is really inflamed. We're gonna have to remove it." I'm like, "Okay, great." So normally a gallbladder surgery is laparoscopic. Of course, they have to open me back up again because it's such a mess in there. The guy can't even find my gallbladder, like, laparoscopically. So they open me back up, remove the gallbladder. And when I went back to that surgeon to have the staples removed from the incision, he was like, "Can I take your case to the tumor board?" And I was like, "Sure. I don't care. I don't even really know what a tumor board is." But he takes it. And a couple weeks later, I get a phone call from my interventional radiologist at the time. And he's like, so there was this surgeon in the tumor board that spoke up during surgery, and he thinks that he can remove your tumor and give you more time. And he's like, I think it's way too aggressive. I think it's too dangerous. I think we still have options. And I'd been told I was inoperable so many times before. So in my head, I just thought, who is this cocky surgeon that doesn't know me, that thinks that he can just like come in here and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna like save this woman's life." Like, I didn't even, you think I'd be like, "Okay, let's do this."
Right.
But I wasn't. I was like, no, this guy's trying to use me to like up his career. That was my first thought. So I call his front desk. Well, first I Google him, call his front desk, and poor Melanie, who now I love, but I didn't know her at the time, obviously. I drilled her for like 45 minutes on the phone. I'm like, what's his credentials? Blah, blah, blah. Like, would you let him touch you? Would you let him touch your daughter? Like, you know, I was just like in the zone trying to figure out who this guy was that thought that
Where was he?
He's at IMC.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we go to meet him, and I'm still just ready to go, you know, tell him all I think about him. And he walks into the room. He locks eyes with me immediately, sticks his hand out and says, "Hi, Kim. I'm Dr. Zendejas. You can call me Dr. Z." And I knew right then that he was going to change my life. Like, all the anger, all the everything that I had felt leading up to that moment about how he was using me and I was going to be a guinea pig and blah, blah, blah. It all left. And God sent me a very clear answer right there.
Gosh, I just got the chills.
Same here.
And he told us that day, like, I've never performed a surgery like this. There's a very likely chance you will die on the table. But yet again, if we don't do something, you have, the 2 to 3 months, the line to live. So we left, and the day that we left, my mom and Tragan and I, all three of us were like, if we had to decide today, what would we say? And the three of us said yes. And my dad, he just looked at me and he was like, I can't think about you going through that. Like, I still can see him. He stood where Dr. Z's office is on the 6th floor in building 1 at IMC. So it's up there high. And my dad just stood and stared at the window while I was just pacing, like talking out loud, like sharing all my thoughts that were just like running through my head, And I remember my dad just staring there. And then we tried to go get food afterwards, which was like the dumbest thing because who can eat after that? We just all sat there and like stared at our food and we're like, But we decided to go through with it. And it was, so my original surgery was March 12th. And 3 years later on March 15th which we termed my Hail Mary.
That's the Hail Mary surgery.
Yeah. So that was insane.
What was it? What made him think, what idea had he had? He's like, okay, I think I can.
So the biggest
at least
thing
have an idea
is that all the tumors were on the right side of my liver.
Okay.
So your liver grows back, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So he knew that he could remove all the right side and the left could grow back and be fine. And then I had the one still in my lung and it was on the bottom of my right lung. So that could be removed. And then they knew that they were probably going to have to reconstruct my IVC. And so the three of those things together all in one surgery is what made it so complicated and so dangerous. Plus the fact that the liver was like taking over the whole body. And I'd already been opened up twice. So there was scar tissue and all that they have to go. Like it took them 2 hours just to get through my scar tissue.
2 hours?
Just to like clean up everything and get through it so that they could get to the liver. Yeah.
Whoa.
So the surgery was 12 hours and they removed 70% of my liver, a fourth of my right lung, reconstructed the IVC. And Dr. Z, still to this day, like praises my anesthesiologist, Dr. Rideout, for saving my life. He's like, that man kept you alive when I have no idea how. My blood pressure dropped to 40. They were putting so much blood in me and I was just bleeding out faster than they could pump it back in. And after 11 hours, Dr. Z said he threw his hands up in the air, like just thought I was done. He left the room. He's like, I went and got something to eat, something to drink, went to the bathroom, cleared my head. He's like, I came back in and Dr. Rideout had kept you alive.
He's expecting to walk back and you were.
Yeah. That man, I gotta meet him. You meet them before surgery, but all of the drugs gave me complete amnesia that I don't remember anything of that day except for checking into the hospital. So I don't remember meeting Dr. Rideout and I never seen him since. And I had a procedure 2 weeks ago and I was telling my anesthesiologist for the procedure about Dr. Rideout, and he left. And when he came back, I saw him walking down the hall with a man next to him. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I just knew, like my soul, my heart just knew, seeing him walk down the hall, that was him. And I just started bawling and I like threw my arms around him and I was like, oh my gosh, I love you. You saved my life. Like, so
what types of things was he doing to keep you alive?
I don't know enough about anesthesia
Neither
to
do I.
know like what he,
like
I need
anesthesia
to
to me is just
him.
knock you out and you come back, but obviously it was more.
Yeah, I want to go sit down and like interview him and get his point of view, and like I want the nitty gritty. Like Dr. Z gave me his surgery notes, but I still need to like sit down and interview Dr. Z, and I want to interview Dr. Rideout and like the other liver surgeons and the heart surgeon and the lung surgeon, like all of them that were in there.
So Dr. Z comes back, you're still alive. He can't believe it.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, I'm going again.
Yeah, and I don't even know what they needed to do because they only had an hour after that because it was 12 hours.
Yeah.
So I don't know if like my bleeding had stopped at that point. Like,
isn't that crazy? I mean,
yeah,
to think that heaven for something would have happened, that he was so close.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 11 hours into it. He walks out, comes back, not knowing if he's got 11 more. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
And then an hour later,
They didn't think they were going to be able to close me because I was so swollen. So they thought they were going to have to leave my abdomen open overnight to let the swelling come down. And then he's like, somehow, like, the swelling went down and we were able to close her. Like, just so many miracles that happened in that OR room that day.
So
It's just incredible.
When they finished, were they like, we did it?
No, they truly, the very first thing the anesthesiologist said to Tragan, he like started crying, first of all, when he saw Tragan. And he's like, just a minute, like walks away, like tries to compose himself, comes back, and he's like, we're not out of the woods. And he
After
goes,
12 hours.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's like, if she makes it through the night, then she has a fighting chance. But they didn't. There was very little hope that I was going to make it through the night. And I did. Obviously, I'm here. And then I went into a medically induced coma a couple days later, and they thought I was brain dead for like almost 24 hours. And I can't imagine what that felt like to my mom and my dad and my husband. Like, I wasn't responding to anything. And there's really creepy pictures where I would open my eyes and they would like sit there and wave their hands in front of me, but I'm just like staring. And you can tell in the pictures that it's just like a blank stare into like nothing. Like there was just no brain activity going on. And then I was fine.
It's like, when do you remember like coming back?
So I was hallucinating for sure, because that's what one of the drug that put me into a coma causes, is hallucinations. But I remember opening my eyes and thinking I was dead and asking God why I was still in a hospital bed. Because people were like, the whack-a-mole game.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
People were popping up like that.
What?
Yeah. And so I would open my eyes and
Like heaven's a letdown.
yeah. And the nurse would pop up, and then my mom would pop up, and then my husband would pop up, and it was like nothing was real. And so I just assumed I was dead, and I was angry at God for leaving me in a hospital when I was dead. I'm like, why am I still in the hospital?
Even after I can't get out of here.
Let me go. And so those were my first memories, is waking up like that. And then when I finally like came to and I had a breathing tube in for 4 days, and you can't talk with a breathing tube down your throat. And I just remember mouthing to my sister saying, help me, like trying to mouth to her, like, help me. Because I was in so much pain and so miserable, and her just like her face like this close to mine, and me just being like, trying to say help me when a giant tube is stuck down your throat. When they finally pulled the breathing tube, and the breathing tube was in so long that I couldn't swallow afterwards. Like I had to relearn how to swallow. I remember the first like sip of water I took, like choking on it, and it was the smallest sip of water. Like I couldn't swallow. It was the weirdest thing. I had to like relearn how to eat. It was so crazy. But
I'm like speechless. I like my brain is just. The thing that just keeps going through my head is, at what point do you realize that this was all, supposed to happen the way it happened? Like, there's obviously a very big job for you to do here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm thinking is, you can look back at it now with kind of that lens of faith. I can only imagine during it, it's like, are you serious, God? Another thing? Like, are you for real right now?
Yeah.
Haven't I done enough?
And there was a prayer I said right before Dr. Z found me. And I had specifically said to God, I need you to show up. And I that's the beauty about prayer and about God, is that he doesn't show up usually how you expect. Like, I didn't expect that it was going to be this insane surgery that has caused lasting bad side effects, for the past 2 years that I've survived it, and continually putting me in and out of the hospital for different reasons, on top of cancer stuff. But it was a complete answer to prayer. And we've talked about this before, me and my husband, like, how do you get to the point where in the midst of it, you can see God's hand rather than having to see his hand at the end?
Hindsight's 20/20. Like,
yeah,
it's easy, from our perspective, hearing it, it's easy to see all the puzzle pieces fitting together, but going through it, not a chance. And
for me, I feel like that turning point was after Keytruda, like when Keytruda started working, and then, Uchtdorf's blessing and seeing that. And then for me, I started consciously thinking, like, how can I see his hand daily in all of this?
You have to be intentional about it.
100%. You can't just be like, oh, God's not here. Like, you have to think, like, how. And I recognized it all the time. Like, I'd be in the hospital and I'd be like, he sent me that nurse for sure. Like, that nurse was special, you know? Just little things like that, being able to recognize that as you're going through it rather than waiting. And I think that goes back to the gratitude thing too, of being grateful for that nurse, and like it all just ties together.
So looking at it now, have you ever figured out the why? Like what's my job? Like, okay, you saved me, you put me through all of this, you helped me. I mean, cause you are so much more than your sickness. Like your personality, just the way that you are, the way that you share, it all had to happen. Because I'm sure you're a lot more bold now. Like, you know, I watch your videos on Instagram and I'm just like, the balls on this girl, I love it. You know, like, but I mean, I think for most of us, we'd have to be in some of the spots that you were in to just realize, like, who gives a crap if I'm not wearing makeup, right? Or who gives a crap what I'm wearing? Or, you know, who gives a crap if people judge me for being mad at my kid? What is in your opinion now, present? I'm sure this changes, but what's the why? Like, what's your job now? Like, being where you are today compared to where you were just a couple years ago.
So I heard on a podcast once that you get to choose your why. Like, I feel in life, we always ask God, why do we have these trials? Why do we go through this? Blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, why don't you just decide why and then run with it? And I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, I like that, because we can wait our whole lives and never know and never really know why. And I blew my knee out playing college soccer. And I remember always being like, I have no idea why God did that, allowed that to happen. Like, just being so pissed. It like ruined my career. It like made me slow, all these things. And now, hindsight, 10 years later.
I'll take 10 of those, please.
Yeah.
Over
Look
what
back
I
and
had
I'm
to
like,
go through.
that was just preparing me just a little bit. Just a little bit. So, but I've decided, and I feel like God agrees with me, that for me, it's to share that miracles are still real, and that miracles happen, and that they happen today, and that God is real. Because I feel like in a world that we live in today, people, I don't care what religion you are, I just want you to believe in God and believe in a higher power, because I don't know how you get through life without believing that there's something more than you and something stronger and more powerful. And it's my most favorite comment I've ever gotten on Instagram. And it was an atheist. And they said, I don't believe in God, but I can't help but believe in miracles when I hear your story. And I was like, that is why I'm here to share, like, to give people hope that there is something more than us humans here on this earth.
I could go on for so long. You seriously are so awesome. So
Thank you.
Well, and you know, I kind of think it to remind us that there are so many good people too, and that God works through everybody, not just, you know,
how many
of us look at hospitals and doctors the way you did when you called Dr. Z's office, like, who is this a-hole?
Yeah.
Like, you know. But I mean, the fact that right when he walked in, like, I mean, I have chills talking about it. I mean, you just you just knowing when you saw him without even talking to him, that he was your guy. It's cool.
There's so many angels in my story. I know that I have heavenly angels constantly around me, but God has constantly sent earthly angels, and Dr. Z and all the other doctors and people and friends and strangers that have been placed. Like, you don't get through something like this alone at all.
So you're not done.
No.
Like, that's
no more 2 to 3 monthers though, right?
That's the best and the worst part of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Is you can maybe close the chapter, but just a new one begins.
Yeah.
Because just a couple weeks ago, didn't you have another cancer scare?
Well, so after my Hail Mary, it was like every 2 to 3 months, I constantly have gotten new tumors pop up in my lungs. So I've done radiation, I've done tumor ablations for the past 2 years. That's what I've been doing. We just constantly are keeping. Oh, he actually opened me up again. I forgot.
Right.
So March was surgery. He opened me up again that November because there was a big tumor back by my spine. So my abdomen's been sliced open 4 times. But it's just constant. And yeah, just recently we've now confirmed that it's organized pneumonia caused from a clinical trial that I was on a couple months ago in my lungs. But at first we thought it was cancer taking over my lungs again. And it was like Dr. Z was crying and Ashley and Melanie and me, and we're all just like bawling in his office together and thinking like no, this can't, because if it goes crazy like that again, you know, Keytruda, my cancer had like outsmarted it, so we had to take me off of it. So it was just like, we got to find another option, but we don't really have any. And it was that scary moment of like not knowing what we're going to do again.
So every time you have a scan and another tumor is there, do you kind of go back to the first time every time, or
No.
are you at now? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's almost like, oh, you have a cavity. Okay,
It
we
really
can just go
is.
to the dentist. We're gonna drill. Going to take some lidocaine. We're gonna be good.
It seriously is. People, I'll be like, oh, I just have a procedure today. It's fine. And people are like, do you need dinner? Like, what do you need? Oh my gosh. Ah. And I'm like, oh no, it's not a big deal. Like, it's just, it really is like, got a paper cut on my finger. It's like, oh, there's another tumor in your lung. As long as it is treatable, I'm good. I'm like, okay, let's do it. Schedule the appointment.
You
Let's
could
go.
probably do half the people their jobs in the hospital. I would love to see who you walk into the hospital. You probably just go to the closet, get the gown yourself.
Oh, I do.
Like hook things up yourself. Like, wait, are you new? You know, it's like,
Oh,
is that
I
how
know.
you hook up an IV? Really?
I know when a nurse is gonna suck at an IV, but I don't want to be rude.
Right.
But
We all
this
have
one
to learn.
kid, man, I still, I'm like, I don't know what he was doing. Like and thankfully after he had missed twice, I was about to tell him that he needed to go get someone else anyways. But he was like, oh, I'll go get another nurse. I'm like, yes, please. You should probably never do another IV again. I'm sorry. You're really nice. But that was rough. Like, he was just trying to, like, jab it in you. Like, he was giving you a shot. And it was not. But I know it's good because I know my body and my story so well, obviously, that when a new nurse comes in and I have a new procedure, I'm like, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. Tell the doctor this. And they're all like,
You better
But-
listen.
I don't know.
So what are you excited about? Right? I mean, not excited. You're excited about life, which is awesome. But like,
Yes.
are you working on anything now? I mean,
A triathlon.
are you really?
Yeah.
I feel worthless. I mean, really. I mean, she's in the middle of the chemo and she's hiking, and I was going to do a triathlon.
I know.
It's amazing.
I actually decided to do it when, it was a couple months ago. Something bad had happened, per usual. But I was pissed, and I was like, screw cancer. I'm going to do a triathlon. Got on the computer, pulled up the Spudman, signed up for Olympic triathlon, and now I'm like, what the crap am I doing? It's fine. Do you realize how smart? Have you ever tried to swim a mile?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
it's
haven't.
really rough. I was like, I'm a good swimmer. I'll be fine. My husband is not a good swimmer, and I'm really scared he's going to drown. But
He's doing it with you?
yeah.
Very
And then my
cool.
best friend, Katie.
It'd be fun to be in your brain during a triathlon to see like how you how it computes pain. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, being through what you've been through, I wonder if things just aren't as painful to you as they are to maybe people that haven't been through what you've been through.
I think the difference is just my mental capacity, which I'm so
Right.
thankful that I was a college athlete.
Sure.
Because that totally trained me to be like, no, your body can do a lot more than you think it is. Like, I
Yeah.
think of so many conditioning days where I was like, I can't do another one. And then you do another one,
Right.
you know? And so that has been huge. But that's what will get me through it.
I'm reading that You Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Have you heard of that book?
Yeah.
He's a Navy SEAL. Really cool
Oh.
story that transitioned into ultra marathoning. Like that now he's one of the best out there. And he says he has a 40% rule. He said most humans, they think they're at their absolute physical like limit, they're actually only at 40%.
Dang.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Then you hear the way, he does these ultra marathons, and it's like,
The mind is,
it's crazy.
the body will do
Whatever
the mind tells it to.
100%.
Absolutely agree with that.
It's so powerful.
So what about, this, just to kind of close, you mentioned your nonprofit. So I made the mistake of clicking on your Vimeo link today on your Instagram.
Oh, did you cry?
Well, I mean, how can you not?
I know.
mean, it's funny. My wife
I
and
cry when I watch it.
My wife and I had a little, we'll call it a spat last night, right? And it's funny. It was basically, hopefully she doesn't get mad at me for this, but it's just basically her just saying, like, I need a little more help around here.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I was watching that. I'm going to try to do this without crying now. I can't believe I cried earlier. But, being a mom is the toughest job there is.
Oh.
And, I mean, hats off, but to have to struggle with cancer while being a mom.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine. And so watching all those women light up, and, it's not just about the financial help, but just you. I mean, I think that's probably what they were most excited about, is just to be able to spend some time with you and just that light you carry and the experience that you carry. So is that moving forward one of the...
Yeah, so I think we're going to do that every Christmas. So what I did this last year was on my birthday. My birthday is December 8th, and I turned 31. So I asked everyone to donate $31 for my birthday to my nonprofit. And then we raised, I think it was just over $8,000. And then I was able to divvy that up and give it to, we did 15 moms.
So if anyone listening wants to find it,
right.
We're going to set up this way. We're going to do it much easier this way. We're going to set up where they can actually go and fill out like an application. Because there was some weird lines that was kind of like, I don't know where you draw the line of like,
Sure.
what, so we're going to actually make an official application so people can apply and do that. And
what's it called? What's your nonprofit called?
it's called Lifted by Angels.
Lifted by Angels.
Which is fitting.
So for your birthday this year, you want $310 from everybody.
Yes,
right?
because I'm 310.
Yeah. Well,
32.
I'll try to lose 90 pounds, and then I'll say I want 310 because I'll weigh 310.
Yes.
There you go.
So I'll say for my birthday, I want $1 for every pound that I still weigh.
right here.
And I'll give it to Lifted by Angels.
I think you just made a commitment to her to do it.
Well, you get
Yes!
310 from me. That's, wait, maybe not the weight loss
90
thing.
pounds.
I need more money than that from people, but I'll give it all to you.
You're awesome.
But I mean, what a cool thing. Anybody that follows you or if they don't, they need to
Start.
click on that link and watch. I mean, what a neat thing.
It was a really
It'll be cool to see you
experience.
build that in the future, because I think we forget how many people cancer is affecting, but I think
And
kids
this-
and moms, that makes it even,
Yeah.
moms are just so important. And so anyway,
And it's what I relate
Such
to
an
and
amazing
it's
cause.
what I understand. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
Thanks for
coming on
having
and
me.
being willing to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Thank
it was
you,
really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
you're incredible. So thank you really for being here, because we will help spread the word however we can.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
All right, go swimming.
I will.